Hi, hello, salut, bonjour. I hope you're doing very well from wherever you're watching at this moment. As always, I'm glad and grateful to connect with you online as we continue to shed light as to what is happening in the Republic of Cameroon. Today, we are a day after the elections results. As you know, you've commented, your voice is heard, you've shared, you've subscribed to the movement, and you continue to show your unwavering support to the Cameroonian people who are going through a very trying time in their history. And as we speak, we always bring you the facts off the top, and we can tell you that we are now a day after the official proclamation of results of a highly contested presidential elections that took place in Cameroon on October 12. It took the Constitutional Council 15 days to the maximum to be able to come out and then proclaim that President Paul Biya, the incumbent, who has been in office for 43 years and is 93 years old, close to, and proclaim him the winner with a percentage of slightly above 53%, and therefore giving Tchiroma the front runner of this presidential race a percentile of about 35.1. And we all know that Tchiroma, days after the elections, came out with his own result sheets and was able to prove to the world that he had won these elections fair and square. And that explains why so many people have taken to the street countrywide, even worldwide, to continue to demand for their vote, because they believe that this is their victory that was stolen from the people. And we've seen protests that have erupted nationwide. We can tell you from Garoua to Marwa, Bafang to Bafoussam, Betwa, even inclusive, many parts of the country, even in places that the Constitutional Council claims that Tchiroma was a loser and President Paul Biya was the winner, you could tell that the people are angry and on the streets. There's been confrontation between security forces and protesters. We can regrettably tell you that there have been so many deaths. The EU has issued an official statement in which they condemn the level of violence in Cameroon post-elections. And they also go to remind the government of Cameroon of the Samoa Agreement, an agreement that is supposed to be based on the rule of law, the legitimate right of the people to practice democracy, and also to be in an environment where the constitution is respected. Among other things, observers have only decried the fact that this statement by the EU is good, but falls short of giving concrete sanctions as to what will happen to the perpetrators, despite the fact that the EU statement is calling on the government to release all those that were detained arbitrarily post-elections and also during this elections crisis, and continue to demand that the rights of the people, freedom of association, freedom of expression, and freedom of movement be respected according to the Constitution. We also know that up until now, we haven't even seen President Paul Biya come out to give an address to the nation, as we see in functional democracies, where if you win an elections, you come out to address the people that voted for you and also give a message for the people that didn't vote for you. But rather, we could see a tweet, a message that was published on one of his platforms. In that statement, which was posted on X, otherwise known as Twitter, we note the fact that it was posted using the official handle of the President of the Republic and not a candidate of a political party that was elected or re-elected in an elections. Because just so you know, up until there's oath taking or swearing in ceremony, the president-elect is not yet officially the president of Cameroon. And that has to happen within a fortnight, which will take place at the National Assembly, as we told you. However, let's set that aside and focus on the content of the statement. He opens up by saying he acknowledges that at the moment when the people have put their confidence in him by giving him yet another mandate, his first thoughts are going out to those who have lost their lives unnecessarily due to post-election violence. And just those opening lines right there infuriated observers and Human Rights Watch activists who decry the fact that how would you call the loss of life unnecessary in a climate that your agents that work under your system are giving instructions that the forces of law and order, who are supposed to be protecting the people in a peaceful protest, they give instructions that they should be shot with real bullets. In a democracy, in a country that's supposed to be a country with the rule of law, and you call that unnecessary loss of life for your own people. And that takes us across the world, where we hear the lead legal counsel of Tchiroma team, Maître Jamel Talib, saying clearly on France 24 that there are so many deaths that have already been recorded, almost 64 and counting, and that they continue to monitor the situation minute by minute and make sure that they document all the facts, because according to them, all the perpetrators of violence on the Cameroonian people will be tried at the International Court of Justice. And they are ready to go to any length to prove that Issa Tchiroma Bakari won these elections fair and square, and there's no shred of doubt. And also decrying the fact that it's not even possible that a 93-year-old person in a country with a population that is full of youth and also having been in office for over 43 years can claim victory in an election that was marred with irregularities and fraud, for which there is blatant evidence. And therefore, he continues to outline the steps that the legal team of Issa Tchiroma Bakari will take to go to make sure that they restore victory, and also to call on those that are in office to continue to respect the rights of the people. He acknowledges that Issa Tchiroma Bakari and his team are seeing the different reactions across the world and continue to take note. They appreciate to hear from the EU, but in the meantime, one can also ask themselves the question, how can the EU in Europe react to a crisis that is happening at the doorsteps of organizations like CEMAC and as well as the African Union? What is their stance? Because these things are happening under their own watch, and yet it takes the EU to react first. We also know that across the world, not many leaders have given their congratulations to the president-elect, so to speak, of Cameroon. We only know of the president of Gabon, who has issued a telegram of congratulations. And within Cameroon itself, we hear from different political party leaders. We can tell you of, as we mentioned again, Cabral Libii was one of the first to come out and officially congratulate and says he's taking note of the results, and also congratulate President Paul Biya. However, one woman stands out clear. Patricia Tomaino Ndam Njoya, the lone woman in this race of 12 candidates, she has come out and vehemently denounces that the results of October 12 that was proclaimed by the Constitutional Council, she doesn't recognize those results. She doesn't see those results as being the true results that came out of the ballot box of the polling station. In the same wave of post-verdict statements, we can mention that of Joshua Osih of the SDF. He put out a statement indicating that the elections was marred with irregularities, and therefore the people's voice may not have been heeded. He said everything and fell short of calling out the Constitutional Council clearly, or denouncing in the same tone that Patricia Tomaino Ndam Njoya of UDC party actually used those kinds of expressions. That shows a clear demarcation. However, the only candidate among the top 5 that we haven't heard from officially, at least, is the candidate of the UNDP, Bello Buba Magari, who hails from the north, one of which many people expected him to be among the first to show solidarity to a brother. But there's a backstory which we're not going to bring up today, which would, in subsequent edition, we might talk about the relationship between Issa Tchiroma Bakari and Bello Buba Magari. But that is not a topic for today. We continue by telling you that there's also a statement coming from Tradex Cameroon, a company that owns gas stations across the country, decrying the fact that during this protest, we've seen that some of their stations were burnt down, vandalized in some cases, and they are decrying the fact that these fuel stations are also owned by, they are also considered a heritage of Cameroon, and therefore Cameroonians should not be looting. And talking about looting, that is what the regime surrogates, or people that are going about castigating the protesters as being thieves and looters. We also have reports from humanitarian organizations within Cameroon, as well as human rights activists, decrying the fact that these protesters are being called thieves and looters because some of them have been seen carrying around fish from different grocery stores and different household items to survive, because they say if the country wasn't in such a bad state economically, people wouldn't have to resort to this means of survival, given that they are out there to protest. And it tells you that if they are protesting that they don't want this regime to be in office, to continue 43 years of governance, it's because these kinds of situations continue to prevail. You could see a video of an old man in his 60s crying like a baby, just saying enough is enough. Throughout his life, he has only seen this government in office for the most part, and it's not been good for him and his family. And you could see youth taking on microphones from different media outlets that were on the field, going on their knees and just begging that enough is enough. You can see the people, they are armless. So the question becomes, if they are being called manipulated and violent and looters and thieves, the question is, who is responsible to have created this environment? Because for 43 years, this environment has prevailed. And you can see that in some parts of the country, the people are on the street armless. They're just shirtless, youth, young people. All they want is their future. But yet, you could see the forces of law and order running after them, dragging some on the ground, brutalizing them. And something unique that has caught the eye of so many observers is the fact that in the cases where police officers were badly injured, you could see the citizens actually taking them for shelter, taking them out of the crowd for them not to be brutalized, and also providing first aid treatment to them. And there are instances of those videos. And that tells you that there's humanity and the people are looking to help. Not they are saying the situation is bad, but they are also there to help their brothers and sisters who also work in the military. And there's a famous phrase in Cameroon's pop culture that says, "Même les niais souffrent," which tells you that everybody, even those in uniform, also suffer the same things that these protesters are asking for. The people are marching peacefully, and therefore the violence that is following is because they are being dispersed with tear gas, with real guns, and also a lot of brutality that we are seeing in these videos is being captured by Amnesty International and is being propagated, where they are trying to document all this exacerbation and the use of extreme force to brutalize peaceful protesters in many of the cases. And of course, you can always decry the fact that you have people who are only living on the streets. They don't have homes. They have nowhere to go. So, of course, when there's a protest, they get into the crowds, and you would always have those that will exaggerate. And that is where some opposition leaders are pointing accusing fingers to the people in office, saying that they are using their power to manipulate public opinion by infiltrating the ranks of these protesters that are peaceful to create chaos and violence, that they know it as a playbook. They've used it before many times to discredit any legitimate movement. Because as you would recall, when the Anglophone crisis was at its peak, there were reports that there is a prominent minister that used his influence to have his own group in the field causing atrocities and then blaming it on those that were fighting for the Anglophone communities. And this goes to tell you that the system is very complicated to understand. It's a complex bunch, because if protesters go to the street to protest peacefully and at the same time they are infiltrated with people that are coming to cause chaos, to discredit the movement, that is what is causing so much fear and panic in the minds of those that are at home watching through the balconies and wanting to join the movement. Because in as much as we continue to decry that there shouldn't be violence and everything should be peaceful, it is hard to understand how violence is taking place on the street, where you can see how the people are being arrested, whereas they are armless. And one has to wonder, even if these people steal fish and little things to eat, is it worth a human life? Why will you shoot and kill your own people? Because property can always be replaced, but a human life cannot be replaced. And that is why we said in our previous video that human life, human dignity has to come back at the center of public service. Because even if people protest, nobody should ever condone violence. And at no point should officers use real bullets. And that is why in Issa Tchiroma words, he calls them mercenaries. Because an army never shoots on its people. The police never shoots on its people. You can have, the force is not commensurate. It's brute force and brutality to people that are armless, women and children, being detained, robbed on the ground, filmed, and sent to other social media influencers that are using their platform to continue to spew hate among Cameroonians. Laughing and making a mockery of Cameroonians that all they want is peace and harmony in their country. So at this point, we continue to appeal to the forces of law and order, to the army, to the people that are supposed to protect their citizens, that there is no way that an election result should be able to bring this much violence in a country. There is no way a positive election that was conducted free and fair and transparent, in which there are instances where a candidate is said to have won by 98% in Dian division in the southwest region. But yet, there is no single soul on the street jubilating and celebrating the victory of their candidate. The question is, who voted for President Paul Biya if we continue to see this amount of unrest, even within the CPDM party? All we could see are a few ministers with a banner celebrating, and also there's an important video where you could see the president of the Constitutional Council, Clement Atangana, sitting and toasting to a champagne and clearly saying that they are happy because their father, him, was responsible to make their candidate the winner of these elections. And that video is also posted on one of Tchiroma Bakari's platforms, and we've seen it everywhere going viral. And we also hear from surrogates of the CPDM come and say, well, that video may be doctored, it's from long ago, it's probably not recent. And unfortunately, forensics are telling you otherwise, because that video shows that it's a video of him. It doesn't matter what elections it was, because he has only been there for 2 elections. Either it's 2018 or it's 2025. And as such, independent observers decry the fact that it doesn't matter the occasion, that it is very compromising, very concerning, and somewhat humiliating to see the president of the Constitutional Council celebrating with members of one of the parties that participated in the elections. They say videos like this just go to solidify and confirm all allegations of high levels of electoral fraud, rigging, electoral malpractice, and corruption, right within the institutions that are meant to be independent and neutral, starting with Elections Cameroon and the Constitutional Council. And at this point, it's important to mention that you have someone like Maître Michel Ndoki, who is supposed to be practicing law and doing things for her country, but yet she's on the run. Why? Because, again, there's a bounty that has been placed on her head, which is so sad to hear in a country that's supposed to be democratic and practicing the rule of law. And as we all heard from the Minister of Territorial Administration in one of his recent press briefings, where he made it clear that many more arrests would follow, especially after Joachim Chemeni and Issei Kane, Florence Ticho, Aristide Mono, Professor Abaoyono, and many more that were arrested. He had already declared that there will be many more to follow, because he accuses all of them of trying to instigate some form of insurrection. And that is what many human rights activists are decrying, that it is far from it, because the reality on the ground shows otherwise. And on our final thoughts, it's important to call on Cameroonians home and abroad to continue to stay vigilant, to stay alert, and to continue to lend their voice to this important process, to support their brothers and sisters that are in trouble. And there are many projects out there that you need to join and make sure that you support the people home and abroad, as you've always done. And those in the country should continue to exercise some restraint and to avoid all forms of violence, because it's important to state your case and to state it peacefully, because the regime on the other side seem to have a mission to discredit any peaceful movement that is being promoted by those that want to see democracy and justice. Because we all know that peace without justice is surrender, and justice without peace is revenge. So the people of Cameroon should always come first. The integrity of human life should come first. And we appeal to the military to remember that they are there to protect the people. They are there to protect the rights of the people. A military does not kill its own. A military protects its own. And we should appeal that as the government in place continues to preach peace and say they want to be remembered to have brought democracy and prosperity in Cameroon, this is the moment to prove it, by making sure that they go back to the drawing board and try to call parties and promote that dialogue and engage in a restoration of the true results of the elections. Because we do know that Cameroon stands at a crossroads. A president may have been proclaimed, but the people are defiant and the world is watching. And until the next one, God bless Cameroon.